I feel like I just got cucked by House of the Dragon. At the end of season 1, I was promised an imminent conflict. And the showrunners just took 8 full episodes, an entire season, to not deliver upon that promise. I feel like I just watched one of the Hobbit movies, too little material stretched over too much screen time. It feels like a practical joke that this season is ending after episode 8, when a 9th episode has never been more necessary. I have been edging for 8 weeks, only to be delivered the same promise that I was delivered at the end of season 1. And on top of that, this season was so predictable. It seems like the showrunners of this season want to build things up to make everything epic. But I miss when major characters on Game of Thrones would just die on a random Tuesday at lunch. I think Rhaenys' death was the most blatant example of this. From the second Rhaenys flies into battle, you know she's dead. There was no question in my mind. And then when she dies, she throws out her arms and has this ceremonious moment. And I feel like some of the shock value we've come to expect from the Game of Thrones universe has been lost. There was no big moment this season. When I look at Game of Thrones, season 1 had Ned Stark dying. Season 2 had the Battle of Blackwater. Season 3 had the Red Wedding. What did season 2 of House of the Dragon have? Rhaenys dying? Aegon being burned by fire? It just feels like, in life, a rule to live by is under-promise and over-deliver. And this season did the exact opposite of that. It promised so much at the end of season 1, only to drag us along hour by hour, giving us scraps. The worst part is that I'll still watch season 3. I'll still be on my couch right when it airs, hoping for something more. Because even if I don't sound like it, I'm a huge fan of this world, and I'd love nothing more than to see this show absolutely shatter my expectations. But I'm starting to think that the glory days are behind us. Okay, now that I got that rant out of the way, let's take a look at the whole season from start to finish. And I'll start by saying something positive, because the first 4 episodes were actually pretty solid. Episode 1 was the Son for a Son episode, where Daemon concocted his own plot to kill Aemond as a response to the murder of Rhaenyra's son. When I was watching it, I thought it was a pretty half-baked plan, but I was happy in the moment because something of importance was happening. The scene that followed was pretty gruesome, and it was a fiery start to the season. It didn't quite match the all-out war that I thought would erupt from the end of last season, but it had its place. The second episode was the episode where Sir Criston Cole takes it upon himself to send one of those twin brothers from the King's Guard to kill Rhaenyra on her heavily guarded island. And it's easy to root for Daemon because he's Daemon, but I just couldn't help but think how dumb of a plot this was for the green side. Naturally, his plan doesn't work out, and I started thinking to myself at that point, there's so many loose cannons in the show, why can't they just all follow orders? Which is ironic, because by the end of the season, I was just begging one of them to do something stupid. But all the same, at least something happened and things were moving along. The third episode was where things started to slow down. Daemon arrives at Harrenhal, where he proceeds to do nothing for the next 6 episodes. But at the beginning, we're led to believe that he may denounce Rhaenyra as the rightful queen and try to take the throne himself. And it's fair, because at this point in time, it seems like that could actually happen. But I'll get to more on this later, because this little side quest of his was maybe one of the most disappointing parts of the second season for me. Also in this episode is when Rhaenyra joins MI6 and decides to sneak into King's Landing to meet with Alicent. It ends up coming out that Viserys was talking about Aegon the Conqueror in his little late night babble to Alicent. And I actually really liked that Alicent was like, it's all gone too far, I'm owning what I did even if it's not right. It was a great move to establish her as a villain, and what happens to her throughout the rest of the season is pretty poetic. I actually have very little problems about Alicent's arc this season. I think it's the best one by far. Episode 4 was the episode where the showrunners thought they would pull one over on us. But they ended up just killing one of the most expendable characters in the show, while trying to trick us into thinking that they killed the king. But no, they didn't actually do that because that would have been too exciting. But again, I'll say that in the moment, it was entertaining to watch. You felt like it was building up to something. You're like, ah, man, this is really gonna raise the stakes. But if you had told me in that moment that that was the most exciting thing that was gonna happen for the rest of the season, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are. And the next 3 episodes were so boring that it felt like everything was riding on the season finale. But I won't jump too far ahead. I have to finish my thoughts. Episode 5 saw Daemon continuing to fuck about in Harrenhal. He gets involved in the feud between House Blackwood and House Bracken. A feud which was hilariously unexplained and hard to remember anything about from week to week. Aemon takes over as Prince Regent, and ultimately the episode ends with Jace trying to convince Rhaenyra to find nobles from different households that have thinner Targaryen blood to try and pair them up with riderless dragons. There were endless memes about how everybody fell asleep during that episode, and honestly, I can't blame them because I just summed up everything that happened in about 4 sentences. 59 minutes of the hour that they used to get that information out was unnecessary. And episode 6 brought more of the same. Rhaenyra offers up a rider to one of the dragons who we don't care about at all, and he gets burned to death. I feel like this was supposed to be a sad or shocking moment, but it fazed me like 0%. Daemon starts to get visions of his brother, King Viserys, in what I think might be the dumbest move made all season. If you're going to hold back arguably the best character in the entire show all season at least make his decision somewhat unpredictable. Every time Daemon has a vision of Viserys, he's like, "You don't want to be king, look what happened to me." And these get to the point where it's just so obvious that he's going to side with Rhaenyra in the end. It wasn't even a question in my mind by the last episode. I did like Rhaenyra's tactical move to send supplies to the commoners in the Red Keep though. I thought this was a smart decision, and seeing Alicent get hit in the face with a fish was pretty fun. Speaking of Alicent, Aemon releases her from her duties on the High Council. Rhaenyra and Mysaria make out because the showrunners needed something to happen during this episode. And then Alan gets chosen by the Dragon Sea Smoke, which was also fine but still uneventful. Episode 7 saw Rhaenyra try to enlist more bastards to become dragon riders. And in maybe the most predictable move yet, the two no-name guys that we've been mysteriously following all season get chosen to become dragon riders. I would have liked some kind of bait and switch here. Maybe the guy who was just trying to provide for his daughter gets burned, and only the imposter Targaryen guy lives. I don't know, just something to throw the audience off. It all seemed too perfect. I did like the part of this episode and the next when Corlys has to interact with his two bastard sons. That imagery was powerful, and I feel like we got too little of it. Alicent goes for a little dip in the pond, and Jace gets mad because he's a bastard and he feels like more of one with all of the others around. The episode ends with Aemon chasing this new dragon rider on Vhagar, but he ends up pulling away at the last second. And when I saw this, I got pretty hyped. I was so sure that the next episode was going to be non-stop payoff for everything that the showrunners had built throughout this season. But if you're watching this, then you obviously know that that was not the case. Aemon gets mad because he can't go fight the new dragon, so he burns some peasant village that we've never heard of and don't care anything about. The guy who always claimed he was a Targaryen is predictably a lot of trouble for Rhaenyra and her cause. It almost feels like she should have at least screened the bastards who came in to try for dragons. Because I think that having someone this irresponsible to ride a dragon is worse than not having anyone at all. But moving on. Jace smolders a lot, Daemon ends up bending the knee to Rhaenyra in maybe the most predictable move all season, making his 6-episode temper tantrum all the more useless. He did see a vision, though, of the Song of Ice and Fire, and that helped him make his decision. And side note, if I see one more tweet about how great the season finale was just because we got a 2-second clip of Daenerys Targaryen from that vision montage, I think I'm gonna throw up. But while all of this was happening, I literally said out loud, we're getting dangerously close to the end of the episode, aren't we? It felt like something needed to happen. And now is the time. And then Alicent comes to talk to Rhaenyra at Dragonstone and basically offers to put her on the throne to protect the realms from her own children. And while Rhaenyra takes a second to trust the idea, she ends up getting there when Alicent infers that she'll even let Rhaenyra take a son for a son, which she's been wanting all season. And sure, maybe everything that Alicent said would work in theory, but it doesn't change the fact that when Aemon gets back to the Red Keep on Vhagar, he will want to seek justice and he will kill thousands to do so. So I thought it was a bit reckless that Rhaenyra accepted, but I was like, okay, fine, go, go, go. I want to see it happen. So then we get this big montage of all of the armies marching into place, and I was on the edge of my seat. But then the screen cuts to black. And I was so mad that I marched right to the computer and started furiously typing out this review. I just can't believe that this season worked so hard to finish off with absolutely nothing. And last season, the show was 10 episodes, and Game of Thrones was always 10 episodes per season, except for the last one. Why on earth did they not do one more episode to pay off everything that they had been building to in the last 8? It just makes no sense. I hope that HBO comes out and says that this is all one elaborate ruse and that the actual season finale is next week. Because I'm not satisfied. This show just doesn't have the same je ne sais quoi as Game of Thrones. House of the Dragon does have some incredible actors like Emma Darcy, Olivia Cooke, and Matt Smith. But there are also a lot of wooden actors that are just not as compelling to watch as the absolute powerhouse cast that Game of Thrones had. I just can't believe that I'm making this video right now. I was absolutely expecting to make a video about how fantastic the finale was and how the rest of the season was justified because it led up to something amazing. But that obviously is not happening. I actually feel bad making this. So many people worked so hard on the show, and honestly, the show is made beautifully. I've never seen anything made so well be so underwhelming. And ultimately, it boils down to the fact that if this season finished what it started, we'd all be singing its praises right now. But it didn't. So we aren't. I just feel like I was taken for a fool, getting so invested in this show only for it to withhold any big moments for 2 seasons in a row. I don't know, man. If I had to give this a number score, I'd say that it's maybe a 4 out of 10. And I think that's being generous. I think the early episodes showed a lot of promise, but that momentum was thrown away entirely by the end. At this point, we can only hope that episode 1 of season 3 delivers. And if it doesn't, I'm gonna have to start wearing clown makeup every time I watch the show afterward. I want this show to be good. I really do. I think it can be. So whether you believe it or not, everything that I'm saying does come from a place of love. But what do you think? Am I being too harsh? Am I not being harsh enough? Let me know in the comments. Please like this video, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. I'm gonna go to bed. Thanks for watching.